We wish Sean Byrne this morning all the happiness as he lies in Kilkenny down there resting this morning on his bank holiday day off. And we have here this morning
Sean.
running as good man Sean, go well. I'm sure you're not looking, but if you are, we wish you well. And whatever you're doing, we hope you're happy and enjoying it. And may you have a wonderful breakfast and all of that. And a lovely day in Kilkenny. We look forward to seeing you back. Is it tomorrow? Yes, in the office.
And take the cholesterol tablets.
Take the cholesterol and be careful. That was good news about cholesterol,
yeah,
James.
Yes,
James McAreavey, the guru of history, and on the desk, driven this morning by the man himself, the controller of programs, Damien Rafferty. Damien is here running the show, and we're delighted that he's so doing. He has brought a great whiff of perfection and professionalism to our operation. Good to have him there doing it. He's now doing something that I hated doing in the BBC. He does the rota. I hated doing the rota for an entire department. What are you talking about? Oh, phone is going off, is it? I wonder is mine.
No.
I'm looking. Oh, look, I've got an interference coming on my phone. It's Sean Byrne saying, no, it's the Prime Minister. Hello, David. Yes. Yeah. No. Well, oh, ship. I'm putting it off. That's what I'm doing. That's terrible, isn't it? I'm sorry, David. Go away. That's fine. But I mean, that's all good about cholesterol coming from Maria there, and people can be a wee bit of exercise as well does no harm, James. That's all good, you know. Talk to me now. Why you're here? Stop the riddling and rattling, Rowan, and find out about this young John Mitchell. Don't tell me there are two John Mitchells. We're going to be. God, I thought we were full to the brim with one, but there's a second.
Well, there was three.
Three?
Yeah.
Are you fit for this, I ask?
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, there was the John Mitchell that we all know about. John Mitchell, the Patriot.
Yes.
There was his father, the Reverend John Mitchell, and there was John Mitchell Jr., who was John Mitchell, the Patriot's son, and he was Captain John C. Mitchell, a captain in the Confederate Army.
Whatever took a son or a grandson of a son of Newry? Yes. Out to fight for the Confederacy?
Well, how long have we got? It's a real complicated story, Rowan. A story that takes you right across the world, from Ireland to Australia to France to America, back to France, back to Ireland, and at the end of the day, the Mitchell family are decimated and lying in different graveyards across the world.
One of them up on High Street.
John Mitchell, the Patriot is buried there.
His father is buried?
His father is there, and his mother.
And his mother.
His wife is in Woodlawn Cemetery in New York.
My goodness.
She died at 10 minutes before midnight on the last day of 1899. Her son, her middle son, James, who was also in the Confederate Army, lays beside her in Woodlawn.
Well, that's something. No matter how hard I try, I'm a romantic kind of old fool. Well, I like the notion of son lying with mother, or if she can't lie with her husband, at least there's a wee bit of togetherness there. Yeah, well,
there's a Dennis Hughes who was a famous commander with the Fighting Irish, the 69th New York Brigade of the Union Army, and he is buried close by.
Goodness gracious. Irish men together.
Well, you see, that was one of the sad ingredients about the American Civil War. There were so many Irish people there having emigrated from the famine years, etc. And when the Civil War broke out in 1861 and it ended in 1865, it was estimated that there was 140,000 Irishmen fought for the Union Army.
My goodness.
And around 45,000 fought on the Confederate side. Now, John Mitchell, to get back to him, the Patriot, he was the son of the Reverend John Mitchell, who came to Newry in 1823 to answer the call of the Presbyterian Church.
And where did he minister from? What church did he minister from?
He was originally, the Presbyterians have a presence in Uri from around 1650.
Yeah.
And their place of worship was at the Meeting House Green in High Street.
And that's a place we could go today and touch a stone that would have been there at the very beginning.
You can get the key in Willie Hanna's paint shop and go up on the arched doorway above St. Clair's Convent.
Yes.
That takes you into the Meeting House Green. And John Mitchell and his parents are buried there.
Yes.
Now, as in most things in Ireland, there was a schism in the Presbyterian Church, and the part of the congregation left. In Uri, they left to form the church in Sandy Street, where Mr. Barry is the incumbent.
Very good. And we're back a long number of years.
Yeah, well, it was about 1848.
Yes.
In 1853, the remaining congregation at Meeting House Green moved to a new purpose-built church at William Street.
Ah, on the corner.
On the corner,
yes,
beside the INF.
Ah, yes.
And today, the Reverend Hutton is the minister there.
And he ministers in Warren Point as well. He's overworked, that fellow.
And Banbridge.
And Banbridge too.
He does 3 congregations.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking Presbyterians at the moment, as we'll delve for a wee minute away from history into the present, and we would express sympathy to our Presbyterian brethren this morning on the occasion of the death of one of their people in Donegal at the weekend. The minister, he was the Presbyterian chaplain at Altnagelvin Hospital. He was the Reverend Stuart Jones from Donamana, and Stuart lost his life in a diving accident at the weekend off Donegal. And Michael Barry, our very own, has been leading the Presbyterian tributes to him. And with the greatest sincerity and gentleness, we'd be delighted to associate ourselves with those thoughts and extend kindness and condolences and sympathy to the family of the man who has gone from us at this time. Sorry for the, yeah. So this is, now we're moving on this because you've been doing work on this. Have we books and things happening about it?
Well, Anthony Russell actually is writing a book about John Mitchell at the moment, and I believe it'll be ready for publication at the end of the year.
Aye, yeah.
But you talked about there a minute ago, Rowan, about being a romantic, and this is a real romantic story. Most people will be familiar with big epic movies such as Gone with the Wind.
Oh yeah, yep.
And you know, Richmond Burning and all this, you know, but that's all fiction. Scarlett O'Hara, all that, you know. But this is a true story, a love story that takes you across the world. John Mitchell, the young banker, becomes leaves the bank, becomes a lawyer, a socialite, and he met a girl, Jenny Werner, from Dominic Street, and they eloped together.
My goodness.
To Chester. But she was only 16. They were found, brought back to Newry, but eventually love conquers all, they say, and they got married in, believe it or not, Drumcree Church in Portadown.
Of recent infamy.
Of recent infamy.
Although, not the church, but those who attended it to cause mayhem and whatever and beat the police and whatever. But all of that seems increasingly to be in the past, thankfully.
Thank God. But anyhow, Mitchell moved to Dublin, and he became increasingly vociferous against all things British, particularly talking about the cause of the famine. One of the famous quotes attributed to him was that God sent the potato blight, but the English caused the famine.
Yes.
So,
he looks a bit like Gerry Adams.
I suppose in later years, maybe with the beard,
with the beard and the gaunt features, and whatever.
Yeah.
And he would have been of a similar political ilk, really. It was politics, but with an edge. And, you know, the other fellow, his mate Martin, was more of a John Hume fellow.
Yeah, he was, well, he was known as Honest John Martin. And
that's not to say that Jerry is anything but honest.
no, but more refined character, and would have been very straight-laced in his deliveries, etc. You know, but anyhow, Mitchell, for his platitudes, was transported under the Treason Felony Act.
They got rid of him.
Sentenced to 14 years, and off he went to Australia. Incidentally, with a man called Thomas Francis Maher, Maher of the Sword.
Yes.
Eventually, both men ended up back in America, having escaped from their confinement.
That was no mean feat, to be fit to get out of Van Diemen's Land.
Yeah, well, they escaped and eventually came back to America, where Mitchell, again in New York, fell foul of the powers that be, criticised the Catholic Church a lot, and being the Presbyterian background, he tended to side towards conformity and all things being kept, you know, under control. The Confederate way of life, it wasn't then, it was the southern states.
Yes,
Their way of life appealed to him. Small states in the north, things were big. They were just like today. They were brash, in your face. The north was industrialized. You know, it was all about volume, making money. Down south, more relaxed. The values still held, all this sort of thing. So eventually, he moved to the south. But the important thing is, Maher, his friend, remained in the north. So many years later, on the outbreak of war, Thomas Francis Maher was the man who founded the Fighting Irish Brigade, the 69th Brigade that fought for the Union Army.
And he would have conceivably found himself fighting with Mitchell.
You took the words out of my mouth, Rowan.
Wow.
John Mitchell, on the other hand, sided with the Confederacy. Three of his sons, he'd had three sons, John C. Jr., James, and Willie. And those three sons joined the Confederacy and fought for the southern states.
They were. It was a big price, because I can't get my head around the notion that Irishmen would have supported slavery.
Well, you see, this is one of the anomalies about Mitchell, and he's a very complicated character because, you know, on the one hand, he railed against the conditions, and rightly so, that his fellow countrymen were subjected to here in Ireland at that time. And yet, no, he was content with the way of life where one section of the community were traditionally oppressed and enslaved. And in fact, he was even in support of reopening the slave trade from America, or from Africa.
From Africa, oh goodness.
You know, so he was a complex character, you know.
Very strange, yes.
But anyhow, the three sons were in the Confederacy, and he himself was turned down to join the army because of failing eyesight. But he joined the ambulance corps. So the story that we're involved with this Saturday at Drumlane House, at John Mitchell's house, concerns his eldest son, Captain John C. Mitchell.
Okay.
Who was a member of the 1st South Carolina Artillery, a young, gallant officer described as an outstanding young man by his peers. At Charleston in South Carolina, in the harbour, there's an island fort in the middle, which was held by the Union Army soldiers. And when the Civil War broke out, the Confederacy attacked it and managed to dislodge the Union Army, and they took command of it. Right at the start of the war, in 1861, So for the rest of the war, Fort Sumter, as it was known, became the focus of the Union Army to get it back.
Wow, yeah, yeah.
And it was under sustained attack for 4 years, finally succumbing in February 1865, and General Lee signed the surrender in April 1865. But young Mitchell was at Fort Sumter from the beginning, and he was promoted from second lieutenant to captain, and he was the commander of Fort Sumter.
Yeah.
That was in April 1863. And a very short time later, about 6-7 weeks later, he was out one afternoon and went up on the battlements of the fort to inspect the activities of the Union Army below in the harbour.
Yes, yep.
A shell came overhead and exploded, and a fragment came down and hit him in the hip, causing a mortal wound.
Dangerous place.
And
That
he
big
died,
artery would bled.
He died bleeding profusely 4 hours later. 26 years old, Rowan, and that was the end of him.
No age.
Now, that was on the 20th of July, 1864, 150 years ago this Sunday.
So this is what you're marking?
On Saturday, we're putting up a plaque, 2 plaques actually, at Drumlane House at Mitchell's former residence, to Captain Mitchell, to remember him on the 150th anniversary of his death. And this is going to be the catalyst for a series of events next year, which are being brought about and organised by the John Mitchell 200 Great Famine Committee, which is a council-led committee that has been set up, and one of the aims is to bring the famine exhibition to Newry for the first time.
Yes, yes.
And we are hopeful that the National Famine Exhibition will come to Newry in 2015.
Oh, wouldn't it? Yes, yeah.
You know, so
Okay.
this is, as I say, a catalyst.
So tell
But
the
to
people...
get back to the Mitchell boys, there was 3. The youngest son, Willie, had been killed the year before John, his eldest brother. He was killed at the infamous picket charge at Gettysburg. He was the standard bearer for the North Virginia Brigade, and 16 years of age, he was killed in the charge.
My God.
And his body, when the Union Army soldiers heard that a son of John Mitchell's had been killed, men were sent out to look for Willie. And apparently his body, they found his body and pinned a note to it, William Mitchell, son of Irish patriot.
Wow.
And he's buried in an unmarked grave on the battlefield.
My goodness. And that battlefield, no doubt, is a place of pilgrimage today. People can go to it.
Oh yeah, and Charleston, the museum. But the third son, James, he got seriously injured, got an arm blown off, but he survived the war. Willie and John were killed. James survived. At the conclusion of the war, he went to New York, and one of his sons, John Purroy Mitchell, became the youngest Lord Mayor of New York in 1914.
Great story.
And sadly, Rowan, more tragedy for the Mitchell family. He was killed in an air accident in 1918. So they were a family that were, tragedies were visited on them, but I suppose a lot of people would say that in many ways Mitchell was the author of his own misfortune, but certainly they paid a heavy price for the support of the Confederacy.
Kennedy's come to mind. A family in politics,
exactly,
a family in service,
yes.
a family who drew upon themselves bad luck and bad times.
And it just seemed to move from one to the next.
Absolutely.
You know?
James, remind the people of when they can come and where they should go in order to see the event on Saturday.
Well, this Saturday, Rowan, we'll be over at Drumlane House on Drumlane Road, John Mitchell's house. It's presently occupied by the Southern Health Trust.
Oh, yes.
And I must say, thanks to Patrick Connolly this morning up in Daisy Hill,
Well done, Patrick.
the estates manager. and they have given us permission to put the plaques up and also to use John Mitchell's house for a function afterwards.
Excellent.
So we'll have the mayor in attendance on Saturday at 12 o'clock. He will unveil the plaques, and we have David Hanna coming over.
Good man.
To pay a lament.
Huge man. A good, decent human being is Hannah.
The Reverend Norman Hutton will be there.
Excellent.
As the minister of the non-subscribing Presbyterians.
Mm-hmm.
And Father Boyle, the local parish priest in Drummondane, a dairyman.
He is indeed.
Good fellow, Father Boyle.
Lawrence Boyle, yep.
Well, Father Lawrence will be over on Saturday as well.
An event of ecclesiastical unification.
Well, exactly, Rowan. It's you know, it's an outreach. It's about bettering community relations, and you know, as you said earlier in a conversation that we had, you know, we all have a contribution to make here, and you know, for all the ills that we have, we can't point the finger of blame at any one section of the community.
But
everybody must take responsibility.
What you and your people are doing, you're beginning to draw out of the mists of history our commonality, our shared areas.
Our shared areas.
And those shared areas are going to build for our future. James, well done. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rowan.
Not at all.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to come in and tell people about what's happening.
Always welcome. We'll play some music for you now.
Thank you very much.
Not at all. Welcome.
If you would like to watch our shows from the comfort of your home, contact Destination Uri now to get yourself a Roku box. Call us on 028 30 834 010.